Shravanam Diaries podcast.
Reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, the book by His Divine Grace Abhaycharanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Attaining the Supreme. Text 14. Ananyacheta satatam yomam smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulabha partha nityayuktasya yogina. For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Purport. This verse especially describes the final destination attained by the unalloyed devotees who serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Bhakti Yoga. Previous verses have mentioned 4 different kinds of devotees: the distressed, the inquisitive, those who seek material gain, and the speculative philosophers. Different processes of liberation have also been described: karma yoga, jnana yoga, and hatha yoga. The principles of these yoga systems have some bhakti added, but this verse particularly mentions pure bhakti yoga without any mixture of jnana, karma, or hatha. As indicated by the word ananyacheta, in pure bhakti yoga the devotee desires nothing but Krishna. A pure devotee does not desire promotion to heavenly planets, nor does he seek oneness with the Brahma jyoti, or salvation or liberation from material entanglement. A pure devotee does not desire anything. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the pure devotee is called Nishkama, which means he has no desire for self-interest. Perfect peace belongs to him alone, not to them who strive for personal gain. Whereas a jnana yogi, karma yogi, or hatha yogi has his own selfish interests, a pure devotee has no desire other than to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the Lord says that for anyone who is unflinchingly devoted to him, he is easy to obtain. A pure devotee always engages in pure devotional service to Krishna in one of his various personal features. Krishna has various plenary expansions and incarnations such as Ram and Nrisimha, and a devotee can choose to fix his mind in loving service to any one of these transcendental forms of the Supreme Lord. Such a devotee meets with none of the problems that plague the practitioners of other yogas. Wow, plague the practitioners of other yogas. Bhakti yoga is very simple and pure and easy to perform. One can begin simply by chanting Hare Krishna. The Lord is merciful to all, but as we have already explained, He is especially inclined toward those who always serve Him without deviation. The Lord helps such devotees in various ways, as stated in the Vedas, Katha Upanishad 1.2.23. Yame vaisha vrinutte tena labhyas tasyaisha atma vivrinutte tanum svam. One who is fully surrendered and engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord can understand the Supreme Lord as He is. And as stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.10, Dadami buddhi yogam tam. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. Buddhi yogam tam. On tam, right? The Lord gives such a devotee significant intelligence so that ultimately the devotee can attain Him in his spiritual kingdom. The special qualification of the pure devotee is that he is always thinking of Krishna without deviation and without considering the time or place. It's not like you think of Krishna in India and then you forget about Him in America, right? I mean, that would be crazy. There should be no impediments. He should be able to carry out his service anywhere and at any time. Some say that the devotee should remain in holy places like Vrindavan or some holy town where the Lord lived, like Sridham Mayapur. Come to Sridham Mayapur. But a pure devotee can live anywhere and create the atmosphere of Vrindavan by his devotional service. It was Sri Advaita who told Lord Chaitanya, "Wherever you are, O Lord, there is Vrindavan," as indicated by the words Satatam and Nityashaha, which means always, regularly, or every day. A pure devotee constantly remembers Krishna and meditates upon Him. These are qualifications of the pure devotee for whom the Lord is most easily attainable. Bhakti Yoga is the system that the Gita recommends above all others. Generally, the Bhakti Yogis are engaged in 5 different ways. First, Shanta Bhakta, engaged in devotional service in neutrality. Second, Dasya Bhakta, engaged in devotional service as a servant. Second, we have already read. Third, Sakya Bhakta, engaged as a friend. Fourth, Vatsalya Bhakta. Vatsalya Bhakta, engaged as a parent. And fifth, Madhurya Bhakta, engaged as conjugal lover of the Supreme Lord. In any of these ways, the pure devotee is always constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord and cannot forget the Supreme Lord, and so for him the Lord is easily attained. A pure devotee cannot forget the Supreme Lord for a moment, and similarly, the Supreme Lord cannot forget his pure devotee for a moment. This is the great blessing of the Krishna consciousness process of chanting the Mahamantra. Let's chant it all together. Hands up. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Text 15. Mamu petya punarjanma dukhala yama shashvatam napnuvanti mahatmana samsiddhim paramam gataha. Okay. Now focus. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Purport. Since this temporary material world, temporary, right, is full of the miseries of birth, old age, disease, and death, naturally, he who achieves the highest perfection and attains the supreme planet, Krishna Loka, Galoka Vrindavana, does not wish to return. They don't wish to return. If you attain Krishna Loka, you don't wish to return. You just don't have the desire. I mean, that's what Srila Prabhupada says. The supreme planet is described in Vedic literature as Avyakta and Akshara and Paramagati. In other words, that planet is beyond our material vision and it is inexplicable. But it is the highest goal, the destination for the Mahatmas, great souls. The Mahatmas receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation to any of the material planets, nor do they even want to be transferred to any spiritual planet. They only want Krishna and Krishna's association and nothing else. That is the highest perfection of life. This verse specifically mentions the personalist devotees of the Supreme Lord Krishna. These devotees in Krishna consciousness achieve the highest perfection of life. In other words, they are the supreme souls. Text 16. Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartinarjuna mamupetya tukanteya punarjanma navidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. Purport. All kinds of yogis, karma, jnana, hatha, etc. eventually have to attain devotional perfection in bhakti yoga or Krishna consciousness before they can go to Krishna's transcendental abode and never return. Those who attain the highest material planets, the planets of the demigods, are again subjected to repeated birth and death. As persons on earth are elevated to higher planets, people on higher planets such as Brahma Loka, Chandra Loka, and Indra Loka fall down to earth. The practice of sacrifice called Panchagni Vidya, recommended in the Chandogya Upanishad, enables one to achieve Brahma Loka. But if on Brahma Loka one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness on the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. Baladeva Vidyabhushan in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita quotes this verse. Brahmana sahate sarve samprapte prati sanchare parasyante kritatmana pravishanti parampadam. Quote, when there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees, who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness, are all transferred to the spiritual universe and to specific spiritual planets according to their desires. Text 17. Sahasra yuga paryantam ahar yad brahmano viduh ratrim yuga sahasrantam teho ratra vidojana. By human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and also such is the duration of his night. Now let's calculate. Purport. The duration of the material universe is limited. It is manifested in cycles of kalpas. A kalpa is a day of Brahma, and one day of Brahma consists of 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas or ages, Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali. The cycle of Satya is characterized by virtue, wisdom, and religion, there being practically no ignorance and vice, and the yuga lasts 1,728,000 years. In the Treta Yuga, vice is introduced, and this yoga lasts 1,296,000 years. In the Dvapara Yuga, there is even a greater decline in virtue and religion, vice increasing, and this yuga lasts 864,000 years. And finally, in Kali Yuga, the yuga we have now been experiencing over the past 5,000 years, are you ready for it? There is an abundance of strife, ignorance, irreligion, and vice, right? Because we have all these devices, so there's so much vice. True virtue being practically non-existent, and this yuga lasts 432,000 years. In Kali Yuga, vice increases to such a point that at the termination of the yuga, the Supreme Lord himself appears as the Kalki Avatara, vanquishes the demons, saves his devotees, and commences another Satya Yuga. Then the process is set rolling again. These 4 yugas rotating 1,000 times comprise one day of Brahma, and the same number comprise one night. Brahma lives 100 of such years and then dies. These 100 years by earth calculations total to 311 trillion and 311 trillion and 40 billion years. 40 billion earth years. Can you believe? 311 trillion and 40 billion earth years. Can you believe it? These 100 years of Lord Brahma. By these calculations, the life of Brahma seems fantastic and interminable, but from the viewpoint of eternity, it is as brief as a lightning flash. In the causal ocean, there are innumerable Brahmas rising and disappearing like bubbles in the Atlantic. Brahma and his creation are all part of the material universe, and therefore they are in constant flux. In the material universe, not even Brahma is free from the process of birth, old age, disease, and death. Brahma, however, is directly engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord in the management of this universe. Therefore, he at once attains liberation. Elevated sannyasis are promoted to Brahma's particular planet, Brahmaloka, which is the highest planet in the material universe, and which survives all the heavenly planets in the upper strata of the planetary system. But in due course, Brahma and all the inhabitants of Brahmaloka are subject to death, according to the law of material nature. Text 18. Avyaktadvyaktayah sarvah prabhavantyah ragame ratriagame praliyante tatraiva vyakta samgyake. At the beginning of Brahma's life, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state, and thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. Text 19. Bhuta gramma sa eva yam bhutva praliyate ratriyagame vashapartha prabhavatya haragame. Prabhavati means manifest, of daytime, agame on the arrival. Look who's arrived. Again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. Purport. The less intelligent who try to remain within the material world may be elevated to higher planets and then again must come down to this planet Earth. During the daytime of Brahma, they can exhibit their activities on higher and lower planets within this material world, but at the coming of Brahma's night, they are all annihilated. In the day, they receive various bodies for material activities, and at night, they no longer have bodies, but remain compact in the body of Vishnu. Then again, they manifest at the arrival of Brahma's day. Bhutva bhutva praliyate, during the day they become manifest, and at night they're annihilated again. So during the day, they're manifesting, and then at night, they're annihilated again. Yeah. The less intelligent, it says, right? The less intelligent who try to remain with this material world. Ultimately, when Brahma's life is finished, they're all annihilated and remain unmanifest for, it's unmanifest, right? Prabhupada says, they remain unmanifest for millions and millions of years. And when Brahma is born, again, in another millennium, they're again manifest. In this way, they're captivated by the spell of the material world. But those intelligent persons who take to Krishna consciousness use the human life, you have to have human life to use it, because animal life you can't really use. Human life you can use fully in the devotional service of the Lord, chanting. What meter should we use? Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thus, they transfer themselves, even in this life, to the spiritual planet of Krishna, and become eternally blissful there, not being subject to such rebirths. Okay, we shall stop here for today, and tomorrow we shall read the next verse, text 20, which begins with the word paras tasmatu bhavunyo. It would be very interesting. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The book links, previous episodes timeline, and biography of the author can be found on shravanamdiaries.com. The link is in the description, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna